Hi everyone, I'm Kaela Rivera, author of Rios and the Desert of Souls, releasing April 13th, and I'm passionate about descriptive writing and descriptive writing done well. So to start, description is an incredibly important part of storytelling, as your high school teacher might have told you. It's the seasoning that brings your story to life, but it takes practice and a strong understanding of description's purpose to do well. If you give the reader too little description, your story can end up confusing. If you go overboard with description, you can drown your reader in purple prose. Like this bear.
Longingly looking at the water-bound Pisces, flying through the ethereal mists of the shattered molecules, crashing from the precipice above, feeling the urgent call of tartar sauce, while desiring the yumminess of the savory softness entering its eager digestive tract, the purple bear eagerly awaits Mother Nature's ample omega-3 laden bounty.
So I'm going to focus on the three purposes of imagery to give you a better idea of whether you're giving too little or too much. The three purposes of imagery are to 1. Clarify setting and movement. 2. Establish the tone of the scene and book as a whole. 3. Curate pacing and weight. So let's look at what each of those mean. The first one is the most straightforward. In every scene of the book, the reader needs to see what space the area is set in, where the characters are in it, and what the characters are doing. Basically, you need to set the stage for readers so that they can easily picture your story like a mini-movie in their head. You might have heard people refer to this as blocking, which comes from a theater term where actors arrange themselves carefully on the stage to make sure the audience knows what to pay attention to, and so that the actors can all clearly be seen. If you get feedback that people are confused about what's going on or who's doing what a lot in your scenes, this is the one you'll want to pay attention to. Now, you might be having problems in this area because you're under-describing the setting and character blocking. If that's the case, here are a few simple things you can do to combat that. First, take a little time at the beginning of your scenes to describe where your characters are and where your characters are in the space. That doesn't mean you have to stop all the action either. A few sentences can set your whole stage. You can even disperse them across the first few paragraphs. They just need to come early. For example, at the beginning of a scene in my novel, Rios and the Desert of Souls, it reads, "I stopped as I spotted an outcropping of 9 decrepit buildings, all clustered together strangely, unlike the other houses around them. The 2 houses facing me were set so the space between them created an archway." That quickly orients you to the main character's new surroundings. But this early description can't do all the work. Every time something new is happening, like say, Cece's going through the entrance, give readers a bit more new description to match so they can always be aware of where they are. Now, maybe under-describing is not your problem. You could also be over-describing your setting and character actions, and readers will still be confused about what's going on. This happens a lot during action scenes, since a lot is going on very quickly, but it's not the only time. If you think this might be your issue, your goal is to simplify. This is a lesson I particularly had to learn because I wanted to tell my readers exactly where every single person's hand was and describe their tiny eyebrow flinches and capture the way their clothes twisted around them while my main character is fighting an army. That's just too much input for anyone. Readers will no longer know what they should actually be paying attention to. So a few things to avoid over-describing. 1. Trust your reader a bit more. You can paint description in decently broad strokes, as we saw in the description earlier, and people will be able to picture it as long as the description itself is clear and easy to follow. 2. Prioritize. Focus on just one major blocking movement or setting feature at a time. Whatever one is most important to avoid readers getting lost. If your characters are brawling, break the fight out into bite-sized chunks so readers know what to focus on as needed. Tristan Strong does a good job of this, particularly in the initial tussle with Gum Baby, so I'd suggest checking out Kwambe Mumbalia's and how he's chunked out the fight scenes in easy-to-follow descriptions. Now on to number 2, establishing tone. This is one of my favorite things to do in writing. Using description, more aptly called imagery in this case, to evoke feelings. But it's also the easiest one to go overboard with, especially if you're a new writer. To use imagery purposefully, You have to know what feeling you want the readers to come away with. It should usually be one feeling and not a huge jumble of them to avoid confusion. Imagery is not about impressing anyone with your ability. It's about telling the readers what to expect tonally from your book as a whole or in a scene. It's about guiding the reader to the feelings that this scene will be or already is about. So for example, say you want to describe a sunset. There are 1,000 different ways depending on what's happening in the story and what you want readers to come away with. Let's say the main character is looking forward to going home after a long day. You might say, "The sun rested low on the horizon, its honey light outlining her house at the end of the street." But if your main character is afraid to go home, you might try, "The sun pooled like blood on the edges of her house's metal roof, leaving behind a sky bruised with twilight." The most important thing is that you align your description with the appropriate tone of the scene and the book as a whole. If the main character had been thinking about how much she loved her house and you described it as "the sun pooled like blood on the edges of her house's metal roof," your readers are bound to be confused because they're getting conflicting signals about what to expect from her home life. You want to give the reader a cohesive and meaningful experience, and paying attention to what tone you're invoking with what descriptions will give readers useful signs to navigate your story without getting lost. Now we've reached number 3, curating and pacing weight. This last way of using description intersects a lot with plot and pacing of a story overall. Stay with me here, it'll make sense in a bit. The more description you give something, or the more frequent you describe something, the more that tells the reader it's important. That gives whatever you're describing what I call weight, or level of importance. For example, in Harry Potter, The Prisoner of Azkaban, there are frequent descriptions throughout the story of Hermione looking frazzled, tired, or being late to things, or suddenly appearing in the classroom. That tells the reader that something important is going on, which of course is revealed later to be the effects of the time turner. Now imagine if halfway through the book, instead of 3/4, there was a long description about Hermione coming in when someone didn't expect it, and a bunch of description about something being off, and the way that she scratched at her neck, or some other such description that was really focused on this mystery. Having that much description piles on weight and significance to what's happening, which builds tension, which tells the reader to expect things to come to a head soon, or at least to get a big, more concrete clue that could help them piece together whatever's going on. So imagine that happened, the big long description about Hermione, right? But no clues and no reveal were given for another 100 pages or so. That would definitely be confusing as a reader, and that's how a description's weight can affect pacing. So what should you take from that? Just be aware your frequency and amount of description sends signals to the reader about what to expect next from the story, similar to how using imagery to evoke tonal clues signals to the reader about what they should be feeling. You want to be aware of what your description is telling the reader besides what it's actually telling the reader. Be conscious of the meta messages you're sending so you can make sure they're communicating what you want them to. Okay, so that's all my tips. Keep in mind these tips, like most writing advice, exist more on a sliding scale than a hard and fast prescription. You may be a literary writer, in which case it's not a bad thing to have a stronger imagery presence in your novel. Cutting down a lot of setting description, if you're a minimalist styled writer a la Hemingway, is a valid choice. Just keep these rules in mind so that whatever choice you make it purposefully, and have a keener eye to see if it's working the way you want it to. Good luck, hasta luego, and goodbye.